Let's bring him in. Film study professor, our good friend Joe Fortunato. It's our Friday visit with Joe, and he spent some time this month going down the holiday path, and he's got one of my favorites today for all of us. He's going to look at the legendary movie, It's a Wonderful Life. I watch it numerous times during the holiday season. Just watched it again a couple of days ago. Joe, take us to film school on It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, good morning, Ray. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, we've been talking about holiday films for the last few weeks, and this is my favorite holiday film of all time, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time, just regardless of genre. And it is A Wonderful Life from 1946. In fact, it premiered in New York City December 20th, 1946, just a few days before Christmas. It was directed by the legendary Frank Capra. It stars Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed, Thomas Mitchell, Lionel Barrymore. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Actor, Director, Sound, and Editing. The AFI list listed it as the number 20th greatest movie of all time and the number 1 inspirational film of all time on the AFI list. So a lot of kudos there. Now, the irony of all that is that it wasn't terribly successful when it first came out. It was a fairly expensive film at the time, costing about $3.5 million, and it only earned about $3.3 million. So it was actually a bit of a financial flop at the time. But it's since become a legendary film, and one of the reasons, kind of like we talked previously about, It's a Christmas Story, kind of got into the public conscience when it went on the 24-hour marathons on TV. It's a Wonderful Life had the quirk of losing its copyright in the 70s, and so then it became public domain. So all kinds of television stations would broadcast it constantly over and over and over again. There were, kind of cheap VHS tapes being distributed, all because it lost its copyright. So it became ubiquitous everywhere, and it really started gaining popularity at that time for, about 20 or so years before they corrected the copyright. It's now sort of come back under copyright control, and I believe NBC now airs it once a year, so it's a little harder to find. But anyway, that's kind of the story of how it became a beloved Christmas movie. One of the fun facts is, when in the movie, Clarence says every time an angel or a bell rings, an angel gets their wings. Well, there's 42 rings heard in the course of the film, so 42 angels get their wings.
Joe, inside the movie, there are so many different things. We could go on and on about this movie. My first question to you, and you may have answered this already with your opening there, is, was this movie accepted as a piece of art from the get-go, or did it take a long time?
Well, like I said, it wasn't a financial success necessarily at the time, so it really grew over stature over the years. It was... Frank Capra has called it his favorite movie of all time, and Jimmy Stewart cited George Bailey as his favorite character. So, the people that made it were excited about it. And as I said, it did get nominated for 5 Oscars. So, from a critical standpoint, it was well received. It just didn't do as much box office as others. And one of the reasons for that was the same, I believe, the same month, like a week after. Was William Wyler's The Best Years of Our Lives, which is such a great movie. One of these days we'll do that one here on Fortunato Film School. And that dominated the box office and the Academy Awards that year. So it kind of got lost in the shadow of that film.
Joe, what are some of the things that stand out to you as you watch the movie from Bedford Falls, New York? What stands out to you, and maybe some behind-the-scenes stories if you have some?
Well, let's talk about Bedford Falls right off the get-go, since you mentioned it. And that's a fictional town, actually sort of based on Seneca Falls in New York, but Bedford Falls is a fictional town. What's interesting is that was one of the biggest sets ever constructed. I said this was an expensive film. And it was it covered, I think, 4 acres of RKO's Encino Ranch. It had 75 stores and buildings, a Main Street, factory district, and so on and so forth. But the fun part about this, or fun for us to remember, not so much fun for the people making the film, is they shot this movie in July. So it was sweltering heat during much of the production. In fact, the scene on the bridge where Clarence saves George was filmed on that backlight. It was 90 degrees that day, and that's one of the reasons that James Stewart is visibly sweating in some of his scenes. And in fact, it was filmed during a heat wave. So Frank Capra actually gave everybody the day off to recuperate. So kind of fun when Jimmy Stewart's running through the fake snow that he's actually sweltering in July heat.
Obviously, James Stewart, obviously Donna Reed are the stars of the show, but Lionel Barrymore to me, and of course, what a career he had, a big star in this movie as well as Mr. Potter.
Yeah, playing Mr. Potter, a great actor. I want to give a nod a little bit to Thomas Mitchell, who plays Uncle Billy. He's probably my favorite character actor in Hollywood history. Had a great year in 1939, which is a number of films. But he wasn't actually the first person considered for the role. Walter Brennan and W.C. Fields were actually considered for the role of Uncle Billy. This was Donna Reed's first film, first starring role. And we just so much identify this film with Jimmy Stewart, but it was actually conceived for Cary Grant.
Oh, interesting. Did you ever see any interviews with Jimmy Stewart? Did he love the role as George Bailey? Did anything you ever saw him there?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, he called this his favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard conflicting reports where he's called this his favorite movie. I've also heard him say Harvey was his favorite movie. So, but It's a Wonderful Life is right up there in his repertoire, and he is he's passed now, but later in life, as many great films as he's done. I think people came up to him and identified mostly with George Bailey. So not only was the film It's a Wonderful Life, but of course it was a wonderful life for Jimmy Stewart as an actor. Talking about some production things, too. Prior to this movie, they used to use cornflakes painted white for falling snow in films. But the cornflakes were so loud that the dialogue had to be dubbed in later, and Frank Capra didn't want that. So they developed a whole new system of snow called foamite, which is a firefighting chemical and soap and water. So there's actually some technical advancements on there as well. A lot of people remember the great scene where they're dancing in the school gym and it parts and there's a pool underneath. Well, that's a real place. That's a real location. It was Beverly Hills High School in Los Angeles, and for many years that pool was still there. I don't know if it is today, but it was there for a long time. And also in that scene, the person who flips the switch to open the pool up is none other than Alfalfa from the Our Gang series.
Wow, great stuff. It's a can't miss movie, certainly in the holidays. Great movie in general. It's a Wonderful Life, as Joe took us back to 1946. Film study professor Joe Fortunato at Film School. Joe, as always, my friend, thank you for the time and the visit with us here on a Friday morning.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next year.
It's a Wonderful Life with Joe Fortunato. That complete Film School presentation, Stephanie will have that posted for you at WAKR.net.